All right, so here in this video, we're going to be looking at writing equations in two other types called standard and point-slope form. Here's the why. Depending on situations, some tools work better than others. For example, if you want to dig a hole using a shovel, it's going to be much more beneficial than using your cell phone. If you need to look something up online, using your cell phone can help, but your shovel can't. So we have different tools for different purposes. And that's kind of the same thing of what's going on here in math as well. Now, all of these are going to be writing linear equations. So we're going to be looking at different tools to help us write linear equations. They'll all work. They'll all be able to accomplish what we want, but some are going to be easier than others. So we're going to start off here with somebody called, right here, I'm trying to see, I guess it's not on the list. This is called point-slope form. Okay, so you'll notice some similar components. The main one that I want to point out is that it has the letter m. When we were doing y equals mx plus b, m was slope. In point-slope form, m is still slope. And so let's compare and contrast this to y equals mx plus b, to where it had a slope and it had a y-intercept. And we called it slope-intercept form. This one is called point-slope form. It uses slope, but notice it does not say anything about y-intercept, because it doesn't use a y-intercept. It's going to use a coordinate point. All right, and so this goes right here. This y1 is a y-coordinate. This x1 is an x-coordinate. Together, these guys make up a point, x1 comma y1. Okay, now, just like on slope-intercept, to where it had an input or independent variable. So this was our independent variable, and this was our dependent variable, also known as input and output. You'll notice that point-slope has those guys too. Here they are. This is our input or our independent variable. And this is our output or our dependent variable. So, let's highlight the things that are the same. Both point-slope and slope-intercept use a slope, and they both use x, and they both use y. The only thing that's different is that instead of using a y-intercept, it uses any coordinate point. So it's actually more flexible. If I was going to use y equals mx plus b, I must know the y-intercept. For point-slope, I can use any coordinate point. That makes it much more flexible and easier to use. Now, it does look a little strange. Y minus y1 is equal to m times x minus x1 on parentheses. So m times the quantity of x minus x1. So it looks strange. It doesn't look as polished as y equals mx plus b, but it is much easier to use in some situations. Here's an example of when you should use point-slope. Let's do this canoeing problem. Jeff paddles his canoe at an average of 3.5 miles per hour. Whenever we see that word per, this is our slope. This is going to be our m value. After 5 hours of canoeing, Jeff has traveled 18 miles. That is a coordinate point. So one of our coordinate points is 5 hours, 18 miles. Write an equation in point-slope form to find the total distance y for any number of hours x. They want us to write an equation, but they did not tell us where he started. We have no information about the y-intercept. But guess what? We don't care. We're using a different form of linear equations, so we can still write an equation with this information. Here's what it's going to look like. Y minus, leave a blank, x minus x1. When we're working with point slope, we're filling in 3 spots. Those spots are the slope, an x-coordinate, and a y-coordinate. You're filling in 3 things. Just like when we used point slope, we had to fill in some things. We had to fill in 2 things. We had to fill in the slope and the y-intercept. This one we're filling in 3 spots, but the 3 spots are easier to fill because it doesn't specifically have to be the y-intercept. So here's how easy this is. Our slope from the problem, we identified it as 3.5. They gave us a coordinate point, x1, y1. My x1 is a 5. My y1 is an 18. That's done. That's the final equation. Y minus 18 is equal to 3.5 times x minus 5. That is a linear equation that models this situation. I could now plug in any number of hours x. All right, I could plug in here any amount of hours, and it would tell me how far we have traveled. All right, because hours would be my input, and that distance would be our output. Now, what makes students feel weird is that this formula doesn't look particularly pretty. It's not in a nice polished y equals mx plus b form. That's fine. You need to start to get used to this guy called point slope. In many ways, he is better. The only downside to him is it doesn't tell us where it starts. But unless I know where it starts, it's a hassle to find that spot anyways. This guy works as long as we know a slope and we know a point, we are good to go. Which means, do you need to memorize y minus y1 is equal to m times x minus x1? Yes. It's just as important as y equals mx plus b. So get used to the memorization of this guy. Okay. Let's do another example here. Write the equation of the line in slope-intercept form that passes through those 2 points, and then we're going to use it to find the starting point. Okay, so we're going to first start off with point slope. Y minus y1 is equal to m times x minus x1. But first, I need to find the slope. Easy. y2 minus y1. Negative 5 minus 5 over 6 minus negative 4. When we do this, we get negative 10 over 10. Our slope is negative 1. So let's get our point slope form ready. We're filling in 3 spots. On those 3 spots, this is y1, this is m, this is x1. We need to fill in our slope of m, which we found to be a negative 1. Now, for our x1, y1, we can pick either coordinate point. I'm just going to pick this one, just because. So I'm picking 6, negative 5. This is my x1, this is my y1. So that's 6, negative 5. So to clear up some double negatives, we have y plus 5 is equal to negative 1 times x minus 6. That is an equation that passes through those 2 points. Now, here's what's cool about point slope. Say you really, really wanted to know the starting value b. We had learned a previous method. Let me show you what that previous method looked like here in this example. What we had been doing is we had been using y equals mx plus b to find our b value. And we did it by plugging in our slope, which in this case is a -1. And I'm going to pick the same x1, y1. So my x1 would be 6, my y would be -5, and we would solve for b. -6 is equal to -5. When I add 6 onto both sides, we get that b is equal to 1. And then that told us that our final equation would be y is equal to -1x plus 1. Now, what's special about this from point slope is that we can find that same thing very easily. Okay. So when we do this, what we're going to do is distribute the slope. So we have y plus 5 is equal to -1x plus 6, and then solve for y. Y is equal to -1x plus 1. And if you notice, we got the exact same answer as we did over here. So what this is telling us is that we have options for finding this stuff out. I will say students almost always prefer using this method over the method we did in 4.1. Doesn't matter which one you use, though. Obviously, they both give us the same answers. But point slope is very useful. It's very easy to write. You just fill in those 3 blanks. And it's also very easy to solve for y and have your equation in y equals mx plus b form. So, and we'll continue to explore, how to use point slope, when to use point slope, getting some practice switching it into y equals mx plus b. What you need to do now is you need to go to your textbook. You need to open your textbook. You need to exit your book. If you're in the actual iBook, you need to exit it onto the main page. You need to go to Resources. You need to go to Chapter 4. You need to go to Section 4.2. You need to scroll down till you see Personal Tutor. And you need to watch the 4.2 videos. It's going to give you more practice on what we just did. If you do not do this, if you skip this step, you will be confused on point slope, most likely for several days. Take this opportunity to do that. That's where the next set of practice on this skill is coming from. You can take notes, if you would like, or just watch and kind of get the practice and then attempt the homework with the answer key. But do recall we've got a second part of this video coming tomorrow about standard form. We've more or less already done standard form, so it won't be too difficult, but that'll come in part 2.